This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is a tremendous Tuesday edition. It is the 27th day of May, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann. In studio with me is my co-host, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, are about their 3 hours of just incredible radio, I believe, information, actionable intelligence, things that you need to know about in these very perilous times in which we live. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network there. Tune us in at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. Of course, we were live last night, Memorial Day, with Augusto Perez and Danny Morano. Morano. It was a great show last night. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us as we walk through this minefield together. Now, tomorrow, Joe, welcome, by the way. Joe in studio.
Great to be here.
Yeah. Tomorrow we're going to be in transit, and Greg Jackson, host Greg Jackson, is going to be a guest hosting for our show. A fantastic, what a guy. A former talk show host out of Boston and Los Angeles. He's a well-known author. He's going to have a couple of superior guests on. In fact, Steve Deese is the author of the number one best-selling book on New York Times, I believe it is.
And on Amazon, yeah.
No, Amazon, I'm sorry. So, fantastic. It's going to be a fantastic program tomorrow night.
He'll also have Brandon House on.
Okay, Brandon House as well. All right. Fantastic, folks. It's going to be a great program tomorrow. So I would urge everyone to tune in to tomorrow night. And once we get configured in Montana, we'll figure out things from that point forward. So, but nonetheless, and check the website for specific instructions. Unlike Orlando, unfortunately, which that kind of went sideways in a hurry when we were down there in terms of getting some shows done. All right. Tonight, Stan Deo's not going to be with us tonight. Stan Deo's, he's fine. Everything's fine. He's just has an appointment this evening, or this afternoon, his time, and he's in transit. So I just want to let you know. So in place of that, we asked Greg Morse to come back, SaveOurHomeAndFamily.com, and I'll tell you why we asked Greg Morse to come back. It's because we left on a couple of interesting notes last week when he was on, and we've got to just kind of keep going with this. I just want to clear something up here. And Greg, by the way, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Doug. How are you?
Very, very well, thank you. Thanks for asking. How Greg got onto, or how we got onto Greg actually was through, wasn't it John B. Wells? And you had talked to Marika Peshman. Marika Peshman is doing a lot with respect to the RICO side of things. You want to talk a little bit about that, or I'm trying to connect the dots here. I just talked with our mutual friend here, and it was like just a breeze of a conversation. But Marika Peshman is doing a lot on the RICO side of things. MarikaPeshman.com.
Let me just a second. I got a cough. Just a second. Just a second.
Sure. And by the way, he's fighting laryngitis, so we figured that'd make good radio. What do you think?
Yeah, throw me on that spit. Marika Peshman is a independent investigative journalist that, until recently, I didn't know her.
Okay.
I think this is the question you're asking me, is to tell you how SaveOurFamilyAndHome.com got related with the Hagmann Report. Is that the question, basically?
Well, yeah, because we know Marika. We had Marika on as a guest, and she's a fantastic, and I mean a fantastic researcher, and just a great researcher. And she got on RICO as well, or on RICO. Yeah, just go ahead and explain what. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm answering the question that you're wanting an answer to. Marika had an interview on John V. Wells' program.
Okay.
And in that show, she asked that she said she was involved in trying to learn about RICO and had some ideas about civil RICO, et cetera. And she made a very nice request and gave out her contact information, said if anybody in the audience is involved, knows about, is doing anything about civil RICO, I would like to hear from you.
All right.
Well, I sent her an email, and I told her a little bit about who I was and what we're doing, and she responded very, very quickly. And so that led to some conversations, which on a lot of information that we shared bidirectionally. And she said, wow, you guys are doing exactly, we're blah, blah, blah. So we went through all the details. And then through Ken, we got introduced to John B. Wells and to you, Doug, and to you, Joe, and that's how we came to be here.
Okay. Now, the reason I think this is important, Greg, and the reason I ask this is because what we're dealing with here in the new media or in this venue is, I would term actionable. We are looking at actionable cases. We are involved. We are proactive as opposed to merely reporting things. I think it's and tossing information out there. I think that people should know that behind the scenes we're developing a pretty formidable force against those antagonists, against those people who are wanting to take us down. And I think that these types of alliances verify that, don't you?
I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly why I've said so many times to your audience and to you guys on the air how grateful I am and appreciative I am to the Hagmann Report giving the kind of unbelievable airtime and support behind the scenes that you guys are doing. Like, as I was talking to Joe a few minutes before the show. I mean, you folks are always available. You're just doing so much. I don't even know if you can really realize. I don't mean this deprecatingly, because you guys are really tuned in, but I don't even know, because you're so close to it, I don't know if for someone like myself who is trying so hard to figure out the right set of equational inputs to get this word out, to motivate people to get involved. It's been like living in the desert for 6 years with no water, and you guys come along, and all of a sudden you've got popsicles, and you've got ice cream, and you've got cool lemonade, and an umbrella to shade from the sun. I don't even know if you realize how unbelievably supportive and how much help you've given to this, and because of those statements, it specifically directs my thoughts to what you just said regarding this is becoming a formidable force, and that's why this format, as I said to you in the first few minutes of the first show, I said, look, guys, I'm not a professional trained radio guy or speaker. That's not what I'm about.
Right.
And you guys allow people to be who they are and focus on the information, and as you and I both know, that just doesn't happen. And so what you all are doing is just you get the Congressional Medal of Honor for that, because we've got to get this information out. And Doug and Joe, without folks like you who are willing to make the commitments that you've done and then follow through on them and follow through in bigger ways than I ever expected, that's the only way we're going to win this fight.
Exactly. And I want to kind of mention, too, after you were in the program last week, I got a call from our mutual friend, and I think my one ear at least, is still bleeding from that phone call, he said, you didn't mention that RICO, the civil RICO that we're going after, or that, if people have the ability to enforce or to enact, allows for to circumvent, so to speak, the court system, the official court system, and you can name individuals personally and triple damages. So how that plays into things is that the law firms that you are seeking on behalf of the many individuals that are involved in this should be ripping down, knocking at the door, ripping at the door to be a part of the actions that you're going to be setting up against these toxic lenders. Isn't that kind of it's about right, isn't it?
It's exactly right. It's not about. It's spot on. And I had the same conversation, but when I got through talking to our mutual friend, he understood. I said, your points are exactly well made. You're just 1 or 1.5 shows ahead of the scheduled plan. You see, I don't come on the Hagmann Report and just listen to your first 5 minutes of introduction and then just throw a dart at the board and just start talking.
Right.
I agenda these shows so that everybody understands. There are specific outlines that we spend a lot of hours each week between shows putting ourselves in, because I've got a great group of support people behind the scenes, and we cuss and discuss and fuss this stuff through as if we were in the audience going, all right, if we didn't know anything about this, what's the next logical step? Not from our perspective, but from the audience perspective. And that is a format that, as you well know, that doesn't happen.
No, not at all.
It doesn't happen. And I listen to at least 100 hours of shows of various types every week. I live on it. And that's why the Hagmann Report is so dad-burn important, because we are able to say on the first show, it's important that we talk about this, and then in the second show, we're going to talk about the other, because the second show builds upon the first. The third show builds upon the first and second. And so when our mutual friend was saying, boy, it was a great show, you did everything, blah, blah, but you forgot to talk. I said, no, we didn't forget to talk about it. We hadn't gotten there yet. And here was the issue. I said, had I brought out the 2 or 3 sentences that he was suggesting I bring out, which he is exactly right, don't disagree, but if I had said the 2 or 3 sentences that he was suggesting between you and I that we missed, your email would have blown up, because people would have said, wait a minute, he just dangled the candy in front of us, and then you said, have a good night, the show's over. It would have created more discord and more confusion. Let's wait until the next show, and this was the next logical topic. Yes. We'll talk about it in detail so people don't feel that we're teasing them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll tell you something. I never was a fan of two-parters or to-be-continued radio shows. I get you. I understand this. And all right, so for the people just joining us for the first time, hearing you for the first time, you're Greg Morse. You're head of SaveOurFamily.com. And I had, in fact, the situation was such that I did not have. You'll be hard linked on the right hand side to our website here in very shortly. But the bottom line is this: if you got a mortgage, folks, if you got a mortgage, you're in trouble. Most likely, 98%, 98.5%, you're in trouble. If you've got a second mortgage, you're in double trouble. And Greg, I'll just kind of let you just give a couple paragraph recap, if you don't mind, for anyone newly tuning into the program.
Okay. Number one, there are very few people, either by percentage metric of all mortgage holders or by numeric metric, meaning how many, 10, 20, 30. The numbers are excruciatingly small as to those people in the country who have mortgages that are not in trouble. The problem is they don't know that they're in trouble. Number two, this is all corruption and scam-based. Number three, the way this problem has turned into the monstrosity that it is because people don't know, they don't concern themselves with it for whatever reason or collection of reasons. They don't know where to go to find the information. And on top of that, it's a very complex process from the perspective of the numbers of pieces to the puzzle. Now, let me clarify that. This is one of the things that I fight, Doug and Joe, every day in planning for the next show that's upcoming. And because we had I think this is a blessing tonight that the schedule required that we shift to Tuesday night, But that also took away from me Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and most of the day Friday to finish putting together the agenda for tonight. So that means I'm going to have to really run hard to fill in the pieces for tonight. But this next logical, topical discussion we're going to have tonight in sequence is that there are so many pieces to this puzzle. People, and I know after having interviewed over 5,000 homeowners since 2008, people believe in keep it simple, stupid, regardless of whether they're talking about building a sandcastle or building a nuclear bomb. Everybody wants everything ultimately simple at every turn. Well, I agree with that. I love it. It's a wonderful, if we were all living in Kansas, it'd be a great way to do it, but unfortunately we can't. So the very uncomfortable task that I have is to make a very complex problem as layperson understandable, because that's all I am. I'm not a genius. I'm not an expert. I have to keep it simple so that I can understand. So what we're going to try to do here is to show people that each one of the individual pieces of the puzzle are not complex. You don't have to have a 400 IQ to be able to understand this stuff. But where the complexity comes, I guess I should use the word, Doug, it's involved. It's not complex. 1 + 1 = 2 is very simple. Doing one equation of 1 + 1 = 2 is simpler than having, per unit of time, than to do 5,000 1 + 1s. That's the analogy. So this stuff is not complex, but it is involved.
Yeah, but let me just say this. I'll give your voice to the rest here. Folks, the website, Greg Moore's website, saveourfamilyandhome.com, saveourfamilyandhome.com. Looking through the documents, I got to tell you, it took me a while to really kind of understand how bad we're on. And for just, if I may, from my perspective, if you take all of the threats that we have right now, and I'm talking about terroristic threats, I'm talking about threats to our economy, which this is really the keystone or cornerstone thereof, one of the cornerstones. You talk about taking the dollar out, as the world's reserve currency, the U.S. dollar out, which I believe wholeheartedly is they're about to pull the trigger on that. What this is, folks, to me, is Agenda 21. It's the communist plank. It's taking you, robbing you of your assets, your property, in particular your property, and essentially having the U.S. government the total primary owner, landlord, if you will, of all of the property in the United States. This is almost like an abolition of private property. I mean, you talk about communism. My word, that's what this is. But getting back to the documents and the simplicity of it, it's you have to take a look at this and take just one bite at a time, and that's why we're doing these theme shows. So, Greg, yeah, and you're doing an outstanding job, by the way. And I also wanted, again, just to make sure that people understand that the Marika Peshman, too, did a fantastic job in terms of her research, her investigation, and you guys together, my goodness, talking about a very strong team. But go ahead, Greg, continue.
Well, all I was trying to get across is that it's involved. It's really not that inherently complex, but you have to go slow. And when you add to that constraints on the average transmission where you got all of the interruptions and the breaks and everything, it is not conducive to the listener, who I'm quickly getting to feel like I'm a part of that family because I've had so many nice comments and people reaching out. It is a very unique audience. Now, and I'm off the point, so please bear with me. I'm not off the point. I'm looking at this from a very, not just a strategic perspective. I'm looking at this from a spiritual perspective. And we have got to start, guys, somewhere. Now, this audience of the Hagmann Report is very uniquely special in a lot of ways. Number one, because it comes out of your guys' tutorship and leadership because of the format of the show. I don't care who you are, if you have 10 hours of information that relates to the life and death of the party to whom you want to disseminate that information, if someone says, yeah, we like it, that's great, go for it, but oh, by the way, you've got 3 minutes to do it. You're not even worth your time. With the Hagmann report, it's let's take whatever time we need to make sure that information gets communicated effectively and properly, and if we misstate something or we fail to cover something, we've got a lot of people watching and listening and commenting, and we'll get it covered. This is not a professional intended to be a PhD thesis speech. This is an educational program where we want to make sure everything gets covered. So if people have questions, for the Lord's sake, please raise the question. If I miss something, which I'm sure I will, I'm human, we'll get it covered. Now, that's where the value of you, Doug, and Joe, and the Hagmann report comes. Now, here's why I keep saying that. I am not trying to blow smoke up your pant leg. That is not what I'm doing here. It is crucially important that people understand that my conviction, my belief, and it's that of thousands of other people, is that your life, as you know it, is at risk right now. The fear that I have is that, as I mentioned Friday night, I'm not running into a jam-packed theater screaming fire. For gosh sakes, we can't keep being politically correct and so concerned about the words that we use and the order in which we use them if that concern subtends and squelches the actual dissemination of the information. Am I making any sense? Do you understand?
Sure. Yeah.
Any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the problems too. People are so doggone sensitive anymore about the delivery. Folks, we have a major problem. We, as individually and collectively, have a major problem with our home ownership. Okay, now you can't get too much more personal than that. Home ownership, the American dream. It's being attacked. And well, not only being attacked, but it's being dismantled by way of legislation, by the stroke of a pen, by the vote of your elected official, and by executive order and by decree, and by the banksters. So what we're talking about here is something so important that you could, folks, really, you could wake up tomorrow or the next day or next week and realize that, hey, you know something? Everything I've worked for is gone. Everything that I've worked for, or at least is, they might say it's temporarily unavailable. You'll get it, but on our terms. I kind of went off on a tangent there, Greg. Sorry about that.
No, you didn't at all, because what we have to do here, and this is the first show and the second show, we use two different styles and we use two different thrusts or directions on the type of information we were discussing to try to lay a groundwork for understanding without scaring everybody to death.
Yeah.
But here's the answer to my prayers, to my spiritual look at this. We have to get to the heart of the matter, which is the first part of the conversation tonight, which is how deep does this go? You guys, and I say this with all due respect, just because it's true, you have no idea how many sleepless nights I've had in the last 3 weeks confronting the devils and the demons in my own soul about this, because you run the risk of scaring people so bad that their eyes roll back in their head. And you know what I'm talking about. And people are always trying to be salacious because they think it promotes them and this and that and the other. And I don't buy into any of that mantra. I don't believe in it. So my concern is a real concern. It's heartfelt that if you scare the heck out of people, they won't listen. Well, if they don't listen, you've defeated the purpose, because the very information that they desperately need to know, they're not going to hear because they got emotionally involved. So I guess what I'm saying is we're at a point, in my opinion, where we've got one shot at this. And this is going to sound really bad, but I don't mean it the way it's going to sound. I'm too well informed, and I don't mean that personally, but I mean there's so many people that know so many things that are helping in so many ways that I'm at a point in my own life at 63, Doug and Joe, where I have come to the opinion that we have one shot at this. And I will not be able to go to my maker or go to bed tonight and look at myself in the morning and say, well, it's okay that we didn't cover this because we were afraid we're going to scare people. I can't live with that. I would rather people hate my guts, slander me and put the tinfoil hat on me, whatever they want to do. I really don't care, because this is such a massive problem. We've got to put all of those emotionally immature constraints aside. We have to forget about it and get to the heart of this, because I believe we'll be protected by the Lord if we tell the truth and we just get it out there. We'll figure out, since nobody has all the answers, obviously, and there are no guarantees, other than if we don't do anything, we're all going to be dead. We really are. So I've given up on that. I'm no longer going to allow myself the luxury of being concerned about all those style points. Second, we've laid enough groundwork. We're working our tails off to get thousands of documents up on the documents for download section. We're giving it away to everybody for free. Yep. So that they can go get, I mean, people don't have any idea how much those documents are worth from a dollar perspective. We didn't just sit around and watch Popeye and the Three Stooges and draft this stuff. This has been an extremely long-haul, very expensive process. So what I mean by that is, please, everybody, take some time to protect yourself and your family, your heirs. Go read it. You don't even have to, we're not saying agree with it. We're not even saying understand it, because we will address those issues if you get involved. We've got to do something as a group to get people really engaged, to use W's word. We've got to get people engaged so that people will, number one, recognize two things: how big is the problem, and how valuable it is that we all come together. Because that's my last statement, then I'll be quiet. That is that the only way, and I'm hoping that we can teach people or enlighten people or inform people about things in a different way than what they've ever concerned themselves on a similar issue or maybe even a given issue in the past. I know we've done that in the first two shows on 3 or 4 occasions because you said, I never thought about it that way.
That's right.
Okay, so if there's a certain degree of shock value to that, but that's a positive shock value. With truth comes understanding. So we're saying shine the light of truth on these things, and if we have an infrastructure comprised of all of us, that is the tool we have to fight back on this. And we do have a very good chance of not only slowing down the process, confusing the process, which is a good thing, getting ourselves as a group out of the bullseye of the train wreck, but we could actually, with God's help, we can actually win this. And what is this? It is the unmitigated, uncontrolled development and expansion of corruption being the mantra for all the government, for all of the banksters, for all the people who are motivated by control, money, power, and influence. Right. That one word, corruption, is at the heart of it, and that's what these shows are about, and that's where tonight, I think, is, since we had, about 5.5 hours worth of laying the groundwork so people could at least know that they could go get this information for free. Just take your time. Get it, read it, come up with your questions. Contact me, contact Doug, contact Joe. We'll get the answers. We'll incorporate it into the next show. We'll get all of the information covered. but we have to come together to do that. So from my perspective, together they cannot stop us. And I think by coming together in an organized, personal, and legal way, there's a legal side to this, where they can't stop us. I think I've got a lot of intel from my background and other things, as well as current folks helping out, that I know we're making a difference already, because your name and my name are already being passed around in some very interesting places because of these shows. And I just think that speaks so well for you and Joe, because people are aware that we're having these shows, and they don't like it because we're hitting the target. Now, we can't win this if everyone else doesn't get involved. We're literally wasting our time, because if you're an informed victim at the guillotine, the only difference between you being a victim at the guillotine, being informed and unperformed, is that you knew a little more when they killed you. You're still dead. So we have to get that information, and then we have to come together and put a little love in our heart, which is where I think it all comes down to. Because people are saying, well, people can make up 1,000 excuses, right, on all kinds of things. We don't have time for that. We've got to get involved. And the way I've structured this thing, it doesn't cost you nothing. Pardon the bad English. I mean, you can give $1 and you're a part of the group. So you see, this is not about money. This is about getting people involved so that we have the numbers of people, the numbers of pages of evidence, and the money that it takes to turn my business model into one after another of actionable events, which they can't cover up, they can't make them go away. Because if we get the whole American population of homeowners involved, and anyone else who wants to help, we're going to be an unbelievably formidable power for these people to deal with.
Greg, exactly. Now, I got a couple of emails here, and the gist of it is, who's Rico? Seriously, what is RICO? And let me just respond by saying, folks, if you want to really understand the RICO action, in addition to Greg's website, SaveOurFamilyAndHome.com, go to marinkapeshman.com. I'll put a link up on our website to both Greg's and Marinka's. But RICO is very unique in the form that well, in one case, there was a case in Los Angeles, where a police officer. Oh goodness, I can't grab it up here right away. But a police officer had committed a criminal act, and of course was held personally responsible for that. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about
Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act.
Right.
And this is what they use for organized crime prosecution. Civil RICO is different than criminal RICO, obviously, but they have many different uses for the RICO statute in the criminal justice and civil law system. Okay,
but in terms of, I always, Greg, I tell you, it's kind of a running joke, because I'll get the notes in the mail and emails saying, I'll always say, I want names. I want to know who to go after. I want to know where these people live, what they do, and I want to know, how I can get my, well, I shouldn't say get my revenge, but how I can expose their corruption, sure, and then go after them, because, it's not. You see, these people, to me, Greg, they're stealing the future of my children, and I don't like that. And I mean, they're stealing, of course, what little I've been able to build up over the course of my life. However, they're going after our children. This is about the future, and so the way that this is not your normal. This is not your normal legal action. This is nothing like that. This is we are going to stop these people in their tracks. But I don't want to get you too far off track, Greg. I know you had an agenda, you had a syllabus, if you will, and I want you to follow it. So you go right ahead and push me aside and.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to do that because I think this, and we both take criticism from all these other folks that want us to see us go one way or the other, and I'm not comfortable with that. I'm really comfortable with you and Joe making your points because it helps me. See, this is not supposed to be a scripted Dancing with the Stars show.
No, that's true.
And so when you interject your thoughts, if it takes time, who cares? We have another show.
Yeah.
I'm in a hurry to get it right. I'm not in a hurry to get it done. And I have a hard time getting people to understand the difference and to discriminate the difference in those two concepts. I'm in a hurry to get it right. I'm not in a hurry to get it done.
Understood.
Because if you get it done and it's not right, you've wasted your time. So all of these conversations, these topics that we're talking about was under the umbrella of one conversation. They're not off point. That's what complexity is, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just one topic. It's a lot. It's like geopolitics. How many people do you know, Doug and Joe, who know a lot about geopolitics, and when they have a 30-minute conversation, they talk about 100 different topics? How many times have you been in those kind of conversations?
Every one.
There you go.
Every single one.
Exactly. So the problem with those kind of conversations, if you talk that way in a radio show, the poor person who is the listener is totally lost.
That's right.
They listen to you, and the individual or whoever it is doing the talking, you hear on every show, they'll go off and say, well, I did a good job because I covered all the points. And this is a criticism I hold myself to. I have to say, I'm sorry, yeah, what you said was right. It's amazingly powerful and important, but the problem is the odds are the listener didn't get it.
That's exactly right.
You threw too much at them too fast with not enough explanation. You didn't give it. How many people do you know go on, and I'm just going to ask you, point out, because this is a criticism I want to have thrown at me. How many times do people come on your show or others, and they talk about things, but they don't make it easily accessible to the listener to go, and please don't take this wrong, I'm not trying to get anybody mad, but we got to tell the truth here. We don't have time for this emotional hocus-pocus anymore. We just don't. How many times do people come on and reference all kinds of things, but they never give out the evidence to the listener?
Well, yeah, and Greg, it's easy to say, for example, that, hey, we have, I'll just use anything, a very serious claim, we have a loose nuclear bomb. Okay, it's very easy to say that, but where can you really go to verify that information? Obviously, that's a little bit different than what we're talking about here. But you see where we're going with this. You need verifiable information. You need a source point, and you certainly you've got references, documentation, quite a bit of documentation with respect to source points. But so now, having said that, let's go back to last week's show. At the very end of last week's show, we were kind of closing in on the fact that, look, if you're a homeowner right now, and even if you're not, you're going to be affected by what's coming. But what happened in 2008 was just a taste on the lips, just a very little bit of a wetting of the lips of what's coming. The financial crisis of 2008. The mortgage bubble that we have right now is huge, and it's huge. And everyone is involved. If you're a homeowner or not, you're involved. You're either going to be run over completely by the steamroller, or if you don't get out of the way, or you might get a foot or a leg run over by the steamroller. Either way, you're involved. Now, what we're trying to do, folks, ultimately the objective here is to help you get out of the way of that steamroller, that freight train, whatever metaphor you want to use. So, having said that, let's go back to revisit the last half hour, Greg, if you can remember, of our show last week, and kind of attach tonight from there.
Okay, let's go back to the last 15 minutes of Friday's show.
even better.
Okay. RICO is a four-letter acronym, RICO, which stands for Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organizations Act. Now, RICO is a set of United States Code under 18 U.S.C. that was a set of laws, and I'm not going to go off into detail about who the actual gentleman was. Marinka Peshman is much better to tell you some detail because she's actually had some communication with the actual man who drafted the original RICO statute. Very, very wise guy. And that drafting of the laws, which are thousands of pages long, just this one section, we're going to try to reach out and get a hold of him because he is the brains behind the original assemblage of the documents that are now referred to as RICO. Now, RICO was developed by itself to be a way initially to provide federal prosecutors more than anyone else a set of statutes by which they could go after organized crimes, criminal acts. The law and we're going to talk about some of the specifics of the benefits offered by RICO that are not offered by other federal statutes. In most cases, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about federal statutes, not state statutes. That is done by design. It is not done with any intent to mitigate or somehow slander or show less importance to state statute, but the bottom line is these people are all operating under the auspices of federal law, and that's where we've got to go after them. Now, RICO, believe it or not, it is the most powerful collection of statutes under that one moniker, RICO, for prosecution of fraud and corruption on a civil basis, in addition to criminal, of any collection of any other statutes on the Federal Register. Now, RICO, you would think, would be very well known by lawyers, and they would be very fluent with it. I'm sure that that is a statement of truth for some people in the legal profession. But from my own personal experience, it is breathtaking, and I think it would be to you. It's breathtaking to find out how many lawyers who have been in the legal profession for decades that are completely and totally unaware, until they heard us say it, that under 18 U.S.C. Section 1964 even exists. They don't even know it exists. I'm not saying all, but I'm saying of the hundreds of law firms that have contacted us, you would be shocked to find out how many of these legal professionals are unaware, number one, that Section 1964 even exists, much less what's encompassed by that section. Now, why is 1964 important? It's because that is the section that we've been using for years to attempt to move our case forward in my specific instance. And it's also the issue, the section of the law that Ms. Peshman has been discussing. That one section is over 800 pages long. 800 pages. Now, Section 1964 allows go ahead.
Greg, is that's obviously done by design, right? The 800 pages. the length?
I would have to say yes, but in this particular case, I got a little different take on it.
Okay.
Now, maybe obviously I could be wrong, but I have a little different take on it. Section 1964 is voluminously long, but I think the character of the man who wrote this statute, I think it's long because he was very smart, he was very intellectually informed, and his goal was to make sure that he didn't leave anything out so that it would not conflict with other federal statutes, so that the law would be as perfectible and as perfect as he could get it. I've never spoken to the man. I hope to, if we can get him to respond to us. I don't think that applies in this case. I think it's long predominantly because he was trying to ensure that he didn't leave anything out. So I have to give good credos rather than bad credos. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact, and it makes perfect sense, especially if you want to cover, and we have to, as victims, and I'm going to use that word victims, we can't lose on a technicality. We can't lose on something not being included in this. So I do understand that, and I do think it's very much unlike the complex laws that we have that are hundreds, thousands of pages. This is more of a I would compare this to almost a restraining order. If this was a domestic dispute or an issue, you know what I'm saying? It's a very positive thing. So okay, I understand that.
Yes, I know what you're saying, and I really believe that. I believe that it's a good thing in this case. I think an analogy to make the point, which I think you're making very well, is that this, in concert to the Internal Revenue Service Code of 72,000 pages or some dadgum thing, that's all done by design to confuse all of us. I don't believe, for the most part, that applies in this case, because this one section is buried in the construct of all of RICO, and it's all about civil prosecution. So I guess it's time to get into it. Let's delve in here. RICO is predominantly a criminal statute. You as an individual do not have the legal authority or standing to prosecute anybody for a criminal act. That's up to prosecutors, district attorneys, attorney generals, et cetera, et cetera. So when it comes to criminal prosecution, we as independent American citizens, we can't do anything about that in terms of the actual prosecution. Yeah, you can go talk to a prosecuting attorney or a district attorney and make a complaint and give him evidence and try to get somebody nailed, but you don't get them held responsible, but you don't have any authority to actually do anything other than just submit what in effect is a document download complaint. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Okay. But buried in this RICO statute under Section 1964, it's like the entire RICO statute is going due north. And then when you get down to Section 1964, it does a 10G right-hand turn, and it's automatically going due south. And a lot of people miss it. It's the gift from God that we've been looking for, in my opinion. It's buried, so most people don't even know it's there. Here's what it says. It says that you as an independent, and I'm paraphrasing now. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to put it into common English as best I can. Section 1964 says that if you can prove in court that you as an individual have been damaged, and that the source of that damage came from RICO criminal acts being conducted, then you can sue in a civil capacity, not a criminal capacity, a civil capacity. You can sue those parties identified with those RICO fraud activities. RICO fraud activities. That's different than saying RICO fraud criminal acts. So if you prove in a court of law in front of a judge, who we hope we can find some that are gutsy and strong and constitutionally motivated, if you prove that a group of criminals over here were conducting criminal acts and that the criminal acts that they committed resulted in activities, the setting of a market, the controlling of a civil market, the LIBOR problem. There's 1,000 different examples. But if you can prove that those criminal acts translated into activities that caused you damages, you can go after those individuals and the entities that they're involved with. You can go after them for civil damages based on their criminal behavior.
And not only can you go after them for civil damages on their criminal behavior, but the law allows for treble damages, which is important when you are scouting for, dealing with, or otherwise working with a law firm or law firms.
Yeah, people love to focus in on that, but it's not exactly accurate on the good side. It's absolutely true. Treble means triple. But in my case, we've identified 6 different financial forms of compensation, and there's a 7th one that is not financial in nature, and we'll get into that.
All right.
But you see, it's more than treble. So people love to jump on treble and say, boy, we get treble damages, okay? But it's really better than that, because you have direct damages, you've got, I'm not going to go into all the details, it'll be, be too detailed. The point of it is, it's better than treble damages.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is, not only is it going to hurt the actual criminal actors or affect them, it's going to really affect them, I suppose. You know, we often see, folks, we talk about MF Global, John Corzine, the former governor of New Jersey, taken off and using segregated money and investing in the European markets and coming out losing segregated money. Well, should he? I mean, did he commit an illegal act? Arguably so. Now, what are his punishments? Well, what was his punishment? Well, he was punished by getting hooked up with Obama, the Obama White House. And frankly, folks, I'm not picking on Obama here, okay? I don't care who the politician or who the person in the White House is, because this is not a Republican, Democrat, right-left issue or Republican-Democrat issue. This is an issue of good versus evil. And I mean, we're talking super evil here.
Right, you have a group of people preying and taking advantage of the good faith of the American people that think that the government and the actors behind them are, doing things for a reason to better the economy or better the lives of people all around, when in fact they are only doing things that truly hurt the people in the long run and only benefit themselves.
Yep. That statement, let me interject something. I'm going to go right to the heart of, to me, what is the biggest issue. And we don't know that we can get this. We know it's legally available to us, but again, we got to win this in court on multiple. I want to see hundreds of RICO cases, civil RICO cases, comprised of all the listeners and the people that we bring into the effort in the weeks to come. The word is called, the phrase is collateral, write this down, collateral estoppel. My definition for collateral estoppel, which I don't think you'll find anybody to disagree with this layman's definition, because I make it lay because it's simple to understand. If you get a collateral estoppel awarded to you as a RICO plaintiff by a court, you are in effect, what you have done by being awarded that collateral estoppel, and I'll explain it in a minute, what you've done is you have, outside the electoral process, in effect what you've done is you've made yourself a legislative body without being elected. Now think about that. You've made yourself, in effect, under the law, you have made yourself, this is one of those golly points that I never thought about. So I'm going to foot stomp it. We're in class, right? So I'm going to foot stomp this. This is on the test. If you get a collateral estoppel, you, in effect, by the court's order, you have been made a law-making legislative body as an independent American citizen. Now, that is the key to our fight. Let me say that again. This is the key to the fight that we all, en masse, that's the key to our fight. Now, let me explain what a collateral estoppel is. A collateral estoppel is an order that is given, remember, Doug, Joe, Greg, and everybody listening that agrees to come in, make their commitment, throw a little dough on the table, evaluate their documents, get their evidence, which we'll go to here in the second hour. When I say we, those are the people I'm talking about. And it's equal to every person on the air. It's equal with you, Doug, you, Joe, me. None of us have preferential rights more or less than anybody else. Here's what happens. We show up with the evidence that my business model allows to be brought together. We submit those hundreds of thousands or millions, which I think it will be if we can get people to get energized here. We will have literally millions of pages which equate to maybe millions of documents, or at least hundreds of thousands of documents, which so over the top and irrevocably and unquestionably prove the fraud, that if we are able to get just one judge who is gutsy and has character and is willing to buck the country club syndrome that we've talked about in detail, he can issue for our account, for our benefit. That means if we have 5,000 people through the Hagmann report that end up going through the analysis process and get biometric put into one case, just one case, and I want to see hundreds of these, and we're going to talk about that tonight, so your listeners have no more question about what is the plan.
Right.
He gives us a collateral estoppel against Bank of America, GMAC, Wells Fargo, Wachovia, Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, whoever it is we're fighting. And here's what it says. It says, Mr. Chairman and CEO of Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, every time you go to court to defend yourself in a legal action that has to do with corporate fraud, in effect, the first words out of your mouth, publicly stated on the record, and if you don't do it, you're guilty of a felony. You have to notify the judge, the jury, the parties in that case, and the press, because they'll be covering it. You have to notify them that you have been found guilty of corporate fraud as a corporate entity.
Okay, I'm not sure if I 100% follow.
Okay.
Wait a minute. You as the plaintiff in the audience. We'll call the audience the plaintiffs in the case.
Correct.
Okay. So you as a plaintiff must admit to a felony. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
We all come together and we file as plaintiffs. We are termed collectively a federal complainant.
Okay, right.
A subset to that federal complainant, in this case, is called a plaintiff.
Correct.
The plaintiff lays out claims against, let's just use, let's say J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Bank of America. Let's just say those three.
Okay.
We sue those entities and individuals by name.
That's right.
We sue them for hundreds or thousands of acts of fraud.
Okay.
The first thing they think is, you'll never be able to prove it. We're too big, too powerful, too small, too smart. All you idiots out there, you don't even know what you're talking about. You don't have the evidence. Well, we've already proven that's not right. And so what we do is we show up with hundreds of thousands or millions of pages and documents, which when disseminated and explained and shown and put on the public record, they are so overwhelmingly powerful that the judge can say, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, you as corporate entities, not just the chairman of the board, not an individual trader, not an individual branch manager, you as a corporate entity have been found guilty of fraud, and you have to notify the world that you have already been convicted and found to be a corporate fraudster.
On what basis, Greg? On the basis of previous actions?
Yes.
Okay.
That we evidence with the evidence that we file.
Okay. And in terms of the previous actions, what you're doing is taking, correct me if I'm wrong here, similar cases as being presented and using them, or cases that I should say have been litigated, and using them as the evidence in support of the corporate fraud.
Not necessarily. You see, what happens is people are going to submit, they're going to follow the procedure instructions, they're going to fill out the forms that we provide them for free. Then what happens is we take all the oranges, it's called metrics. You take all the oranges, you put them in one bucket. You take all the apples, you put them in another bucket. Then the oranges are going to file a civil RICO lawsuit. The apples are going to file their own civil RICO lawsuit.
Because of certain variations that differentiate the two. I understand that. Okay. All right.
Okay. Now, those are called common points of law. So I'll give you an example. Let's say one lawsuit would be comprised of borrowers, all of whom had gotten their loans from Bank of America. And all of those loans happened between 2002 and 2009. I'm making this up. It doesn't matter what the metrics are.
Sure.
And even further, let's say they were all done in the state of Georgia. Now, you could also have the same thing, but all of them were done in the state of Texas or Tennessee, wherever. So you can quickly see how we can control by how deep into the metric definition of the common points of law we go, we can generate literally thousands of RICO cases based upon, because it's tied directly to the number of people that will get involved.
Understood. And just for the audience, this reminds me of about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. I worked a case where I went on the inside of a financial insurance agency, and from the manager, and these are not correct terms, but you get the idea. Think of a manager, and then think of agents. What the manager would do is say, go out to the agents, go out and visit Mary Smith, and get Mary Smith, who's got, a term policy, and convert it into I'm trying to remember the term it was back way long ago, but a type of policy that was attached that paid dividends, but nonetheless, what the manager was doing was telling, when I said term policy, I meant a whole life policy, something that accrued value. What the agent was, or the manager was telling the agent to do, is go out and take this policy and turn it into another policy where Mary Smith, didn't have to pay a dime on it. The proceeds were used to pay off the cost of insurance, or the premiums, and Mary Smith couldn't be happier because she felt like she won the lottery. But what she wasn't told, and this was kept from her, was that was contingent upon the interest rates being at 18, 19%, or whatever the companies, and the dividends. But what happened was, and this happened, folks, in a large scheme, by the mid-90s, the interest rates, or the late 90s, early 2000s, when the interest rates came down, all of a sudden Mary Smith, not only didn't she have insurance, and she was so much older, and therefore perhaps uninsurable, so she had no insurance and no money left. Now, the reason I brought this up is not to confuse and conflate different ideas and confuse the issue or conflate different things, but think about that for a moment. The vile implications, the nefarious implications, the fact that the people know. I mean, it's like a real life movie, Wall Street, except instead of inside information, what the crime is, it's even more nefarious than that. It's more destructive, intentionally destructive than that. Greg, I don't know if I screwed that up or not, but you get the idea of the pain and suffering, and there's the theft right there. I mean, I don't know if you've got a similar example, or a refi, maybe.
Yeah, let me put it this way. If you are in a lawsuit, somebody sues you, and you know in your heart you've been doing bad things.
Yep.
But you've worked really hard to cover it up, and until this lawsuit was served on you, nobody's figured out what you're doing. How would you feel? How would you feel if you go into court on the first day of the trial, and your lawyer on your behalf stands up and says, Your Honor, before we continue, we as the defendants, we have to notify the court that according to this case, in this state, this date, this time, this number, we have been ordered to notify you. Now remember, the jury's sitting there. The public is sitting in the audience. And if we do this right, we're going to have the press covering these events. We have to notify you, Your Honor, term used frivolously, that we have been found guilty of being a fraudulent and or criminally fraudulent corporate entity. Now, if that's the first statement that you have to make to keep from breaking the law and committing another felony, which can get you arrested right there on the spot, what effect do you think that has on the mindset of the jurors, the press, and the people in the audience? That is a collateral estoppel.
Okay, and thanks for circling back and keeping us back on track. Collateral estoppel, and estoppel is a rule of law, basically. From memory, it means to throw up roadblocks, basically. But
and with that, we should. If this is a good place to take the top of the hour break, we'll do that now.
Well, I think it's necessary. Not only a good place, but we have to.
All right, folks, listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Tuesday, May 27th, 2014. Our very special guest is Greg Morse. His website, saveourhomeandfamily.com, and bookmark that site. There are plenty of documents to download and reference points on what is going on with the mortgage crisis, with the economic situation in America. And I'm in hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Tuesday, May 27th, 2014, our last broadcast until we get to Montana for the Whitestone Remnant Conference. Don't forget, tomorrow Greg Jackson will be guest hosting, and he has 2 great guests coming on. Both are authors, and Steve, how do you pronounce it? Brandon House? Steve Deese, okay. And Steve Deese's book is #1 on Amazon right now. With that, we're going to go back to Greg Morse, who is our guest for this evening. We're talking about and this is the 3rd show, I believe, in a series of shows doing on the corrupt practices of the lenders and the institutions of our government in lending and mortgages. And we know we had that mortgage crisis in 2007, 2008, that I guess even myself didn't really understand all the truly important things that have to do with why that happened. But that's why Greg is here. He's here to tell us on what's going on and what we can do about it. So, Greg, I'm going to hand it back to you.
And before you with the handoff, of course, I got to jump in here. You know, I just can picture Jackie Gleason saying, "Shut your big mouth." Remember? Well, Joe, you don't remember that, but anyway, folks, I really urge you to see the big picture in this. That if we lose sight of the big picture, if we lose sight of the criminality that's going on worldwide, if we lose sight of the New World Order that's attempting to be established, if we lose sight of the fact that we've got, in my words, satanic Luciferian fruitcakes that are out there attempting to rape, plunder, pillage, steal everything away from us, and then kill us dead, okay, take our souls even. If we lose sight of that, then we lose sight of if we lose sight of the larger issue, then we need to really understand how big of an issue this is. And that's all I wanted to say before handing it back off to Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
Excuse me. All right, let me finish up real quick on this collateral estoppel issue. Everyone has got to understand that. They have been issued in the past. It is up to the judge, but the way we get collateral estoppels issued is by having large masses of people involved in civil RICO cases, supported by hundreds of thousands or more of documents of evidence which prove that we justifiably deserve in the body of our complaint, the actual lawsuit. A federal lawsuit is termed a complaint, whereas a state lawsuit is termed a petition in most states. In our federal complaint, because of the voluminous amount of corroborated original source evidence, we deserve to have a collateral estoppel issued against the defendants that we as a group are suing in court. The question I asked you, because I think it is important personally that your audience hear from your experience as an investigator, if you were involved with the defendant and you had to make that public statement on the record in front of the jurors, the press, and the public in attendance, what impact does that have on precursing the opinions, Doug, of that jury, in your opinion?
Well, obviously, it would. you cannot imagine the effect, the negative effect against the defendants that it would have. But let me ask you a question, Greg. Wouldn't that be prohibited by the, we'll say, circuit court judge or the judge from being made? Wouldn't that statement be prohibited from being made? Because that would pollute the jury pool.
As we understand it, that's not correct. If you go into case number 1 and you are awarded a collateral estoppel against defendant A, and then in 60 days in another court, that defendant has to come up in a second case under the same charges, they are under a court order from the first case in which they have to notify all the parties that they have already been found guilty of fraud.
Only if they were found guilty of fraud. In other words, if the charges were made, but no action or no verdict, if you will, was rendered at the time of this action.
Of the first case, right?
Right. Then, of course, that statement could not be made, and certainly it would not. It would be prohibited. It would be prohibited from being required to say that they were charged with fraud, even though there's a continuing course of criminal conduct evident here.
Yes, you see, but we've answered we've answered the question, haven't we? Because the defendant never wants to admit that they're guilty of anything. But if we, in the first case, were awarded a collateral estoppel in which they are ordered to inform the judges and the juries, etc., in subsequent cases that they have already been found guilty as a corporation, as an entity, not a specific individual necessarily. The whole company has been found to be a fraudulent behaving company. You can see how devastatingly negative that is, and the potential impact in the second case that we're just now starting today against that same group of defendants. It's like walking into you've robbed a convenience store.
Right.
And you're the only one who has the videotape showing you holding up that convenience store at gunpoint. Well, it's like the simplistic analogy is to say you have to show that video before you even get into the second case in which you're charged with holding up another convenience store. Think about the impact.
Well, of course, and the jury's going to look at that and say, they have an obvious bias initially that they're guilty even before the first opening statement is made because of the continuing course of criminal conduct and the accusations that are relevant to the previous conduct. So I get that. I understand that. But we have to but where I'm tripping up here, Greg, and help me out here just a bit, have any of these corporations been found guilty of such charges to this point by law?
We have not found any collateral estoppels being issued against banks or lenders or mortgage brokers in the mortgage crisis as we know it to be today. The collateral estoppels that have been issued in the past have been against other entities on other charges. The point of it is that, so the answer to the question is, we haven't found any yet. I'm not saying they haven't existed, but my sense of it is, had they been issued, you would have already heard about it. But it is a tool that is one of those allowed by law. Now hear this. Being able to make the claim in a federal complaint that specifically preys upon the court to issue a collateral estoppel against those defendants, that is stated in the law.
Correct.
It is an allowed claim, just like treble damages.
Right, and the comparisons there are many as well. Okay, I understand what you're saying, and
am I making it clear? This is crucially important because this is one of the cornerstones of the plan. So if I haven't made it clear because I'm half sick, I'm sorry about that, and I'm doing the best I can here. But if I haven't made it clear, let's don't get off this subject until you're satisfied that I've at least made it clear to a C- level. I at least want to pass the test here because people have got to understand that this is allowed by law.
Right. Allowed by law to the extent that the defendant would have to make that self-pejorative statement in front of a jury, and in front of the press, and in front of God and everyone, only after that the defendant has been found guilty of exactly the criminal conduct of which you speak. However, what I'm hearing you say is that there are so many actions out there that although you haven't found one yet, I do suspect you'll probably prevail in finding one, at least one, if not more than one, against the numerous defendants that we're looking at.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to speculate. All I know is that we have found numerous instances where collateral estoppels have been issued. Here is the goal. The goal is very reachable because if everyone comes together, that is the key. I'm not being redundant. Well, yeah, I am being redundant, but I'm not being inappropriately redundant. If we come together, it's not the $20 that somebody contributes. What is important is that they may have 20 individual corroborated pieces of evidence which show fraud. It's the evidence that we win these cases on, number one, because without evidence you don't have a leg to stand on. Number two, we know how corrupt the judicial system is. We've already discussed that in quite some length, and W did a very good job of discussing it in the last 30 minutes of the first show. So we're all pretty much aware of the degree of criminal behavior that's going on in the judicial system. The way we fight that is to have a bigger army. We shine the light of truth on this, and we have thousands and thousands of people involved. We're going to be able to professionally scream it so loud from the highest mountaintop that nobody's going to be able to cover it up. That's how we beat this. It's real simple. This isn't rocket science.
Now, as we're going through this, and I think it's necessarily step by step here. I did receive an email from someone. I'm not going to give out any names in this case or locations, saying that this person did work on a class action lawsuit class action. I got that on my brain here. Civil RICO, against a major corporation.
Right.
Okay, now I'm going to skip down a little bit here. Civil RICO requires proof of commission, omission, and misrepresentation, right?
Correct. That's all part of RICO. You've got to confront those issues with who, what, when, where, why. The proof of tests for all the evidence is much more restrictive than in a non-RICO case. Yes. In other words, this is not something, don't anybody mishear me if I made a mistake. We got to be really clear on this. You don't get a collateral estoppel or any other judgment of any kind awarded because you're the prettiest person on the block and you speak better than everybody else, or you're lucky. That's not what happens. It is all based in our collective ability to use evidence to show that our claims are valid and they are meritorious.
Exactly. No.
So we have to prove these points, Doug. Absolutely. You don't get it just because you asked for it.
But what happens, though, Greg, and this emailer asked this question as well. What happens, for instance, when you run up against, we'll say, the Ninth Circuit Court, which in the eyes of this emailer is basically out of the question. The rampant greed, corruption, backstabbing among attorneys,
yes.
and so on. I mean, you've got this morass of corruption there, in my view, and apparently in this emailer's view as well. So, is it a true statement that you've got to be very careful as to where this is presented, in what venue this is presented?
We think it's absolutely crucially important. If that's what the emailer is saying, I agree with that person 100%. From this perspective, you can look at the history of the actions, the cases, if you really take the time to study them and evaluate them, not just read somebody's blog, but you have to read the actual court documents that are the public record that evidence the proceedings in that case. And that may sound simplistic to being almost over the top, but it's not. I can give you hundreds of examples, Doug and Joe, where people in the media or bloggers, people will hear something and they will write it as if it is definitive truth. And then if you go to the actual documents, as my researchers are so good at doing, and they actually read what the judge and the jury said, many times you'll find that which has been covered in the media or blogged about is totally incorrect.
Oh, yeah.
You have to read the actual documents. But because that final judgment order, let's say, was 120 pages long, the person writing the article doesn't want to take the time. It's easier to listen to 5 other people in their similar job description that said, the pig is white, the pig is white, the pig is white, so they just write down the pig is white. But if you read what is in the court documents, it may say something totally different.
Right. And I've got to say, folks, some of that research is some of the most painfully, I mean, you certainly don't want to sit when you're tired and half ill reading a 120-page court ruling. It's just, wow.
It's very painful. That's why I say this is not a fun discussion, but we're on the right track, because none of these things we're saying means that all we got to do is write a love note to the judge and we're going to get it because we're nice-looking people or we speak well. No, we have to prove it. But remember when we first, in this segment, one of the first things I believe you said was, folks, please don't miss looking at the big picture. Something like that.
Right.
Okay. This is part of the big picture. The big picture is don't allow yourself to get tied up in the very confusing, as I call it, non-productive morass of all the legalese. I think you'll agree with this statement, but I'm not going to precurse your response. These people in positions of authority, what are they most, in your opinion, because I'd like to see how we feel similarly about this, what are they most concerned about? The judges, the lawyers, the banksters, what are they most concerned about more than anything? That's the big picture issue. They're more concerned about the American public becoming factually aware based in millions of documents of proof that they're guilty of doing bad things.
But they're counting on the American public never even looking at page 1 of them. You could have
bingo.
A million. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. I mean, no rational, sane human being is going to read a truckload of documents. Seriously.
You see my point. That is the big picture. So when people say, well, this segment says you can't do this, that section says you can't do, stop. You're falling victim to the dissemination of misinformation and the propaganda that kills most cases. Remember, if we come together and we are such a powerful group, remember what our goal is. Our goal is to force these issues, based on evidence, into the clear, unobstructed light of day. Number two, I said in the first few minutes of the first show, I said the goal here is to have these issues adjudicated and decided upon by juries of our peers.
Correct.
I said that almost at the top of the beginning of this whole process. Nothing is a guarantee, but I have the faith in the American people because, remember, the people on that jury are just like you or me. And if you show them truckloads of incontrovertible evidence that says these people are guilty of RICO activities, my faith is that the majority of the juries, when they are made aware of the evidence on a document-by-document basis, it will force these issues into the light of day that has never before been done, all the way back to before the S&L crisis, and I guess you could say all the way back to 1776. That's the big picture here, Doug. As I see it, that is the macro big picture. We are talking because we have more at stake now than we've had since 1776.
Sure.
Do you disagree with that?
Not at all.
Okay.
No.
So if we have more to lose now than we've ever had since the country was founded, why would any logical thinking person think that or conclude that the biggest issue that we've ever confronted is going to require a fight or a pushback that is less than the problem is big?
Oh, no, I understand that, and I think our audience understands that. Where I think the only two, and I don't want to dwell on this. I want to keep pace with your with your syllabus. But I think the audience would listen to this and say, well, no, wait a minute here. I've got my papers. I've got my papers. I've got my mortgage. It's I'm sure of it. Well, folks, go to Greg Morse's website, which is hard linked off of our website, and go down the checklist, and you'll see what's going on. And you'll see that, no, you're not in the shape you think you are in. Now, this website, just for those listening and not on our page, is saveourfamilyandhome.com. Go through the documents, go through the checklist, go through your to identify your mortgage, your bosses. And you said something earlier in one of the first programs. If you're not affected by this personally, then chances are your boss is, or your neighbor is, or your family member is, and that's going to affect you tremendously as well. So we're all affected by this. The enormity of this issue. We are coming upon, in my view, Greg, and this is just kind of a footnote in this discussion, but a headline in another, is the fact that we are about to see one of the greatest financial crises hit America here since forever, and that is the United States losing the world reserve currency status, as well as this Weimar Republic-style hyperinflation, or something similar thereof. And this is all part of it as well. What we're talking about here is part of that same mechanism, that same one world government mechanism. Greg, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and you continue with your methodical presentation here.
Yeah, that's very accurately said. I hope I'm not making this painful because I'm too methodical. I know how important it is that we cover these issues one at a time so that everybody learns what we say, and then they have the basis to go to the website, read the documents, then we go to the next point. And before long, you'll notice that the rate of learning and becoming aware decreases exponentially the more you get into the mindset. Does that make any sense the way I said it?
Oh, yeah. Folks, just get into the first couple of documents or 2 or 3 documents, and just get the cadence, understand the cadence, the legalese, and it's not that difficult, okay? Although they want to make it sound difficult, they're morons for doing so. I mean, look at the Constitution, look at the language in some of these cases. Bottom line is this: read through the baloney, get right to the heart of the matter, and you'll be able to do that with the future documents you read.
Now, RICO is going to be the basis for our actionable events. Civil RICO, not criminal RICO, civil RICO. Number 2, it's better than treble damages in most cases. I've already said, and I'll say it one more time, I'm not going to go into all of the various types of legally allowed financial claims for recompense for damages that you have incurred because of the criminal activities of these banksters, for lack of a better term. It's better than treble.
Right.
So don't just focus on, oh boy, we get 3 times, if they hurt us for $1, we get $3. No, it's better than that. And the big issue here, the big macro issue, and we got 2 issues to talk about tonight that, in my simplistic way of trying to summarize this, there are 2 issues which, when put together, comprise the entirety of the macro issue. 1, collateral estoppel, and 2 is the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation at 55 Water Street in New York City. Those are the 2 major components that will make people stop breathing for 30 seconds until they get themselves under control. That's what we've got to communicate in the next hour and 20 minutes.
All right. Give me those 2 again.
The first one is the fact that federal law under RICO 18 U.S.C. Section 1964 allows us as individuals or groups to sue in a civil capacity for damages encompassed or realized by us as individuals, the harmful behavior of both individuals and corporate entities.
So John Doe at the local First National Bank, who entered into the agreement with you, is on the hook civilly himself, right?
Exactly. We could list I just use Bank of America. I don't. They're all equally up to this in to their ears, but you could list the corporation, you could list the chairman of the board, the president, the CEO, the secretary, the treasurer, every member of the board, all the way down to and including the branch managers as an example. We can include all of those people. Now, that is so powerful when supported by, hopefully, hundreds of thousands of people, each of whom have made available to us their evidence in their specific case. It's my belief that the fight here is to make it so powerfully loud and broad that the cliche phrase of grassroots movement takes on a whole new light, a whole new characteristic. Because go ahead.
No, you're right, and I just want to say this: the manager of Bank of America, who just signed off on that $500,000 mortgage of that residential property down at the lakeshore, and who gave the luncheon talk at the local Kiwanis Club yesterday. I just got a message for you. We're coming after you. We're coming after you hard. Because, see, we know what you know what you know, we're coming after you. Not only are we coming after you, we're coming after everything that you've taken from us. Just want to say that. Makes me feel good. Go ahead.
Well, it should, and give you an example so people can wrap their arms around this. I hope, if I don't botch it up too bad. Most people out there who have done any investigation of this problem know the term robo-signer. Robo-signer is completely discussed in some reasonably decent detail on the website under Documents for Download in our whistleblower affidavit. So if you don't know what a robo-signer is and don't understand the devastating implications of the illegal activities that took place by all of these MERS members in the utilization of robo-signers, go to that document and read it. You can read it in 15 minutes and you'll understand it better than most other people on the planet. Now, a robo-signer, the analogy I'm making here is to say that in the event of the robo-signing crisis, there is a guy by the name of Jeffrey Stefan that many people are aware of. He was a robo-signer, and he's involved in my case from the standpoint that he used to represent with 16 other people, according to his own deposition sworn testimony, that he had a group out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, himself and 16 co-workers, he was the head of the group apparently, that did hundreds of thousands of transactions, all of which were illegal. And you have to go study what a robo-signer is, where did the term come from, because it's a cliche term. Excuse me just a second. Excuse me, I'm really sorry. You have to understand what a robo-signer is, what they did, and the negative legal impact it has on you. But here is a group of 17 people, 17, that did hundreds of thousands of transactions a year, year after year after year, on behalf of GMAC, Homecomings Financial, and Homecomings Wholesale Funding. Now think of that. When we talk about the breadth of the statement you just made that we're coming after you, Mr. Bank Manager, people say, wait a minute, I know what they're thinking, I think I know what they're thinking. They're saying, wait a minute, how can you make that statement because there's thousands of bank branches around, we can't possibly go after all of them? That's not really true. Because
I mean, we can.
You bet. And the fact of the matter is, Doug, there's not that many people involved. You see, here's one guy who had 16 other people under his leadership operating out of one building in Minneapolis, Minnesota, who destroyed the chains of title and fraudulently destroyed people's mortgages by his own admonition, hundreds, plural, hundreds of thousands per year. So here you've got 17 people who could be named. 17's not a big number. You could have those 17 people named in dozens or hundreds of civil RICO cases because of their involvement in each one of those cases. How do we define that? Right back to my business model. People follow the procedures. They're not rules, they're procedures. They fill out the forms. They send them to us. They go into the database. They are by metric put into the categories. Then we can identify, because all of the people submit those documents and that information to us, the computer database automatically and very quickly says, this lady in Georgia has the same set of facts as this guy in Montana, as this person in Arizona. So it becomes, when we utilize technology, it's not as big a problem as you at first would think it would be in terms of connecting the dots between people all around the country who have been victimized by name by the very same people. Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense. And just to add a little bit to this, in my view, and again, you can nudge me or correct me as you see fit, but the further up the ladder you go, the more overlap, the fewer people you run into, kind of like a pyramid structure, where you've got the same people. I mean, I'll just throw out a name, just as well. It has no basis in any known reality. Hey, Jamie Dimon. Just throwing one out. Let's say there was a guy by the name of Jamie Dimon. I mean, who knows? Could the person by that name be at the epicenter of much of this? Or, boy, I could throw out a number of different names. Folks, you get the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I can sit here. I've got a list in front of me of most of the CEOs for most of the banks. I can do that, but I don't think at this juncture there's any benefit in doing that. I just don't. I don't want to be salacious. I want to let the evidence do the talking. And all of these chairmen and CEOs, while we're all getting our clocks cleaned, they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars of bonuses for doing bad things. I still haven't figured that one out. Maybe you have.
Well, yeah, and I think I have, and I think it's what the shows that have been not part of this particular topic, but the theme of shows that we've been having over the course of the last several weeks, even months, have been to expose this. Shall I say this New World Order? I mean, it's Kissinger, it's the people that talk about this, and Bush, and it transcends all political parties, saying that this is a new economic order. This is a new. Well, if this is our new economic order, we ain't liking it too much, frankly. And not only that, you're taking from us, you're stealing from us. And not only that, you're taking the future away from our children, and taking the property away from us, and the property away from our children. Oh, and you're taking also the civil liberties away from us, and the right to actually own property in this country, which is really nothing more than a communist agenda. That's how all of these programs fit together. And we've given you another programs, the who, and the spirit behind it, and where this is all leading. This is now the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, and what I'm suggesting is that surprise can be used by us tactically and strategically, so that these people that most of us know, there's no reason for us to say it on the air, is there? We don't want to give them any heads up prior awareness of the fact they may be getting ready to be charged upon. So it's better, in my judgment, tactically, if we get everyone involved, we collect our evidence, and then we say exactly what we want to say correctly and completely one time when they are served with multiple lawsuits.
I 100. Look, being an investigator, I agree with you, because anything short of that, you always run into a series of problems. Well, on all ends. But I will say this: you've gotten diddly squat from the captured media. You've gotten diddly squat from the elected officials in Washington. You've gotten diddly squat from the financial people. You've gotten diddly squat from CNBC, MSNBC, Fox News. You got nothing. We got nothing. But I'll tell you something. In my position, only not as an investigator now, but speaking purely as a very rough around the edges talk show host, my position is to let them know we're coming for you. Now, let me back up and say, from an investigative viewpoint, no, that's not a very smart thing to do. No, we have to gather the evidence and go after it methodically. Go after this, present this very methodically. You're exactly right.
And that's what this plan is. That's what I've developed, because I think the shock value of that is going to be breathtakingly and overwhelmingly scary to them. Now, I have already done that in my own case, but I'm just one person. So a guy who just gets $140 million, his last bonus last year, whatever the heck the number was. Speaking of Jamie Dimon, I don't remember the number exactly. It was a huge amount of money, and I don't care.
Obscene.
It's just obscene, the amount of money. And so it's the Peter principle. It's screw up and move up. So it seems to me that the more bad things they do, the more the government and the industry comprised of all of these criminals, which I don't think is an over-the-top statement. I think they are criminals. I think they're heinous criminals. And it seems that the more bad stuff they do, the better they get compensated for it. It's just bizarre. How are we going to stop that? Are you going to stop it by quaking in your boots and saying, well, it's so big, what can I as one person do? Well, quite frankly, that's not a bad reaction, is it? Because I'm one person and I'm still standing. But it hadn't been for, it's not been without its stress, tremendous financial cost, and a lot of hoping and praying that we can hit more of the targets than we miss. But and we've been lucky in a lot of cases where a lot of people have failed. And a lot of them have been lawyers who have a whole lot more legalese skill than I have, which is zero. I just try to be a common sense researcher and thinker, but I don't ever claim to be a legalese guy. I'm not.
And thank God you're not, Greg. Greg, we're at the top of the hour. I hate to do this to you, man. You're going to have to hold that thought. But I got to tell you folks something. We had talked about the butter Zillion, going after the specific FOIA documentation, and I just want to say this: we had mentioned this to our audience, and our audience just came through in flying colors and really sent a message to government officials through the numbers. And see, this is how we win, is through the numbers, where you've got, what was it, Newsweek that just came out, a bunch of conspiracy nuts, talking about a bunch of conspiracy nuts that believe certain things. Well, let me tell you something, Newsweek, and let me tell you something to the people in Hawaii listening to this right now, because I know you are. And let me tell you something to the people who are part of Fogbo, and let me tell you to the people who are part of the cover-up, this massive cover-up that has been right under the noses of the press. You see, what you didn't count on, what you did not count on, is the fact that we are winning now, or we will win on the numbers, that people have come through, and to each and every person that has come through with a note of email of saying, I'm in for $1, I'm in for the 10, I'm in for nothing, I'm just in, I'm back, yeah, I'm praying for you. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I understand. It doesn't matter if you sent a card, a letter, a note, a postcard, whatever you sent. The fact that the government knows not your name, but the number of people that are going after this particular endeavor. You see, that changes the equation, and I have to say that the message was received in this case. So I guess I said all that to say this: if we, as an audience, can make a difference, can send a message in that case, this has an even greater shot. You know why? Because everybody has got a stake in this game. Well, you had a stake in the other game too, but it wasn't as obvious as this. If you've got a mortgage, know somebody who's got a mortgage. If you've got a home, live in a home. You're a part of it.
With that, we're going to go to the top of the hour break, folks. You're listening to the Hagmann. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of this Tuesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report with our very special guest, Mr. Greg Morse. Visit his website, saveourhomeandfamily.com. Saveourfamilyandhome.com, I'm sorry. Saveourfamilyandhome.com. There you will find all kinds of documents, and you can download these documents, you can read these documents, and see the library that is compiled and put together. And it's a vast collection of important documents that are very important to further understand what is happening and what we were talking about tonight.
And you know what, something, Joe? The reason I harped on this before on RICO and the mechanics of RICO in particular, just imagine this. Well, I mean, the explanation, the reason, or just imagine you being a lowly branch manager, you knowing, for example, somebody in your organization just may have, I don't know, was awarded $140 million in bonuses and what have you, and here you are in your split family, single family house on your, corner lot in suburbia. You're going to have, I would suspect, if that is you, and you've got, you work 8 to 5 and whatever. I suspect being low on the like a branch manager, and being named in a RICO suit. I do suspect, having been experienced in cases similar to this, that you just might be motivated. Knowing that you're targeted, you might be highly motivated, as a matter of fact, to roll over on the people higher up, so they can, or so you can protect what you've struggled yourself in many respects. The RICO bill is written to motivate people to testify and turn over the big boys and the kingpins and I have now made this an adjective, the John Corzines. Okay. In fact, I did. About a year ago, I put this up on the website, John Corzine, adjective, to screw people. Okay. So if you've been Corzined, you've been financially hoodwinked. So if you've been Corzined, and nonetheless, once again, let me just emphasize this: that the explanation about how RICO is intended to work is the reason for the low-end people, such as branch managers, to be. Once they're named, they become very motivated to roll over and say, "Hey, wait a minute! I'm just doing my job, man." It was old JD over there that gave me the direct order, or whoever. So that's to motivate people to testify and take out the higher ups and kingpins. Just as an FYI, that's just as an FYI. All right. Greg, welcome back, sir. You all right? Are you sipping some hot tea with honey or what?
That's exactly what I was doing. Yeah, I'm a little bit. I'm fighting it, but we're getting there. Hopefully, people can get some value out of what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. All right. Now you were going through 1 and 2. Go ahead and finish.
Your last statement that you just made is really important, because I know we're going to get, as you always do, there's always going to be armchair quarterbacks who are going to criticize us tonight for kind of bouncing around, but we're really not, because this is such a massive problem that everything we're saying is important, but it may not be in exactly the right chronological sequence. That's why you've got, ladies and gentlemen, to get involved, because the forms and the paperwork that we provide you in the weeks to come are going to take all of that confusion away. And you're going to see I hope what you will consider is a well-thought-out, methodical, controlled methodology, and it'll bring all of these, what seem to be kind of shotgun issues we're talking about, together in a very methodical presentation format, and the picture will come clear to you. So we're really not being disparate in the way we're talking about these things, because everything that everybody is saying has a tremendous amount of value. It may not exactly be in the right chronological sequence, but who the heck cares? We're trying to get the information out, and I think that's what's most important, Doug.
Amen, brother. And you know what? It ain't easy, okay? We just make it look that way, Greg. That's all.
Well, here's the issue. The macro fight is where we're going to win this. You're not going to fight the Battle of Normandy with one canoe, one guy, and a slingshot. This is the biggest fight we've ever had to confront as non-military civilian combatants. They're trying to take everything of value from us. We cannot expect to be able to fight that fight by everybody living on their computer and blogging one to the other and making comments. That's all beneficial. It may be informational, but it's not actionable. And that's what we've got to get across. You have to be engaged. If you don't get engaged with the group, you're going to have to do everything that me and my group have done on your own. And I'm telling you, it's scary. It's not fun. It is cost prohibitive for most people, and you're not going to get there. I'm not going to get there by myself. I know that. That's why we're bringing this out now. Now let's get really into the heart of the macro picture, what the key ingredients are, and why people have to decide immediately whether they're going to engage or not.
Let's rock.
Number one, there are so many pieces involved that your last statement is one of the keys that I've not talked about, and I'm so grateful to you for bringing it up, and that is think about the lower level guy who may know what's going on or he may not know what's going on. But the one thing for sure, he's trying to take care of his wife and his kids and his family and get promoted and get raises and that sort of thing. How do you think it's going to affect that guy when he finds out that he is being named in a RICO case and the value of that RICO case is $18 billion?
I'd like to have a seat at the dinner table that night, as he explains to Mama, and as she looks out the window and sees the swing set, and of course the 18.5-foot Chris Craft boat sitting in the driveway in her costume. Never mind, you get the idea. Yeah,
that is one of the things that people don't think about because they dehumanize the effect of this documentation and the risk that documentation portrays. You're talking about real people who know that this could terminate their life as they know it. They are not idiots. They're going to make, just like Jeffrey Stefan. We never finished that. I got off the subject. I apologize. But he's an example of a guy that woke up and realized, I'm either going to I got to make a choice. Which side am I going to come down on? Well, let me tell you, this is fact, absolute fact. Do you think for a second that these corporations are going to go out of their way to protect their employees?
Let's see. In my experience as an investigator, squealing like a stuck pig. Does that mean anything to people?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
The point is that these individuals that work for these companies know that if they're being accosted by us as a societal population, they know that their bosses are not going to protect them. They will throw them under the bus at light speed. Now, that is going to be a good thing for us because if we come together, what does that act of coming together communicate to the other side? Let me hit 2 or 3 key points that are really, this is more important than talking about, page 4, section 5, subparagraph A in RICO. We've already covered the majority reasons of why RICO is the way to go, but I want to keep it macro so that people can understand the conclusion of the book, and then we can reverse engineer and tell the book from the back end forward so people aren't guessing. RICO is going to be the heart of it, but here's where we're going to get a lot of our strength. I know you feel this way because you've said it on previous shows, both with me and not. The government as an entity has forgotten about the Constitution and the fact that we're supposed to have a constitutionally republic form of government. That's number one. Number two, they don't care because they believe with all the entities, which are the banksters, which you think are not government, but they really are. You think they're not the government, And legally they're not. But they are so involved with buying off politicians, and I'm afraid judges as well, that they're in effect all the government. So if you don't want to call it government, call it the power infrastructure, the Illuminati, the New World Order. Whatever term you want to put on it, it means the bad guys that don't care about us, the little guy. Now, what happens when other little people like you and I find out that they are being attacked personally, and up until the time they become aware of that attack, they thought they were a part of the bigger bad side? They're going to roll over. I wouldn't
like a trained dog. Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if 5 out of 10 that we listed, I believe, would roll over. Am I right? I don't know.
The ones that don't commit suicide by jumping off of buildings or, shooting themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, what do they have? I've got a few people that are already talking to me. I can't say one more word about it than that. But there are people out there who know that they have been showing, like in the days of Nazi Germany, we didn't do anything wrong. We were just following orders.
Nuremberg offense. Yeah.
Exactly. Sorry, that dog doesn't hunt. So, because of the Hagmann report and our conversations, I've already been contacted, and I apologize so much for my voice, but I'm doing the best I can. I've already been contacted by numerous people who have already copied and absconded with copies of their databases. Now think about that. Why have they done that? Why have they done?
Insurance, let me take the pressure off you a little bit, Craig. I know you're fighting it, man.
I'm really sorry.
No, I'm just thankful we had this opportunity because, folks, we're dealing with a time-sensitive issue. Things are coming at us from the dollar side. We will kill the dollar is more relevant or just as relevant today as it was when I wrote that article. Please read that again. The mortgage crisis, I shouldn't even say crisis. I don't like that phrase, mortgage crisis. The mortgage swindle, fraud. That's been at the pinnacle of this takeover of our country. And don't forget, where does this all end up? In the larger, as you say, Greg, in the macro sense, it ends up really in the hands of foreign entities because this is collateralizing. I mean, think of the Bundy situation. Look how many people turned out, or look at the reaction to that. If people knew what was going on now and understood what was going on now, we'd have a gazillion Bundys situations, or we should anyway. That might be, I don't know how much a gazillion is. Maybe that's a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, we're going to have people who, like these folks who have contacted me. In most cases, I'll be honest and tell you, they haven't even disclosed their name to me yet. That's how scared they are. And I can tell you that one of them is the chief legal counsel. Number one, he sits on the board with one of the major bankers. I couldn't believe it. He contacted me on Saturday.
Wow. So,
yeah.
Folks, you're making a difference. We're making a difference by getting the word out there, by spreading the word. The difference is being made. And at least when we rest our heads on our pillows tonight, we can thank God that we're making a difference collectively and individually. And it's because of you passing this information out there that this is happening. I just want to say thank you, everybody, from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you.
And I second that, because without that, we're not going to go anywhere. I'm just not going to cut the mustard on that. I'm going to tell you exactly. If people don't get involved, don't commit, and don't do those three things that I talked about on Friday, we're just screaming at I don't know what the right analogy, the right statement. We're just wasting our time. People have got to get involved because we're going to find, I'd lay my life on this, we will find so many people down the food chain that are scared for themselves and their own families that what they're doing is they're copying the databases that they have access to. And I had one lady who is high up in the lending structure of one of these banking organizations, and she has access to their offices after hours. And she worked she heard the show on the 16th. And by the show last Friday, on the 23rd, she had already made up her mind that she was scared enough about her being challenged by us as a group that she felt it necessary, and of course she's breaking every contract she's ever signed with this outfit because I'm sure they say it's all private information, you can't take it home, blah, blah, blah. She worked for 3 days and finally got it, what's today, Tuesday? She got it all home Sunday, and she's already hidden it. She's copying these data files because she knows it may be the only barter tool she has to protect herself. That's why they're doing it. Yep, it's for self-preservation. It's insurance, just like you said. So where do we go to get these people? How do we go to get these people to come forward to augment the evidence that we as a unified, mobilized group will already have a lot of? It falls into two categories. First, we're going to have, if everybody will get mobilized and join the effort, $5, $10, $30, whatever you want to do. I don't care, but you've got to engage. We can't do this for free because we will not have one key ingredient, and that is the money we need to be able to deal with that necessary evil of having counsel.
Oh, okay. Now, I just want to make it clear, though, Greg, it's not people donating money here. It's people who are engaging in the actual process of grabbing, and this is not an endless...
Becoming part of the litigation.
Right, and just to be also clear, this is not an endless televangelistic kind of process. In other words, this is to get the legal process going. Obviously, time compensation, but get the legal process going, because once the legal process is going, the pump will be primed enough where this will take on a life of its own. Again, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's exactly right. But you see, we have to do the three things. We can't expect people to think that all they have to do is do their checklist and they're done.
Oh, of course not. Of course, no. But we also have to know too. I just got an email from a woman here. Let me read this to you now. I think this would be a good time to read this to you, and then you can comment on this, because this does fit into the conversation we're having right now. And again, I think it's extremely important for people to understand they're not alone in this. Hang on, I'm getting it. Hold on, hang on. I got about 14 million. Okay, all right. It says, "Hi, Doug," and I'll just use the first name Ann. Ann writes this, and I've got a lot of emails like this. Look, I'm affected by this, but my husband, he was injured a while ago on the job and is currently disabled, unable to hold a job, can't work, impaired, so on. One income I've got, and I've fallen behind on my mortgage payments. I'm a few months behind trying to work out a loan. Okay, and this is something too that we should discuss as well, now or whenever. But she said, I've fallen a few months behind and trying to work out a loan modification, but it's not looking good, and I'm pretty sure we're going to end up in foreclosure. Is it worth pursuing this when my home might be lost to foreclosure? But there's two reasons I read that. Number one is the obvious reason is we've got a lot of people who are hurting real bad right now, real bad. And the other end of it is, what about Ann, whose house is we're very well facing foreclosure? Would you do a loan remodification? or loan modification?
Would I do it? Absolutely not.
No, I wouldn't either.
Absolutely not. But here's the simple answer to Ann. If you become involved and we file a RICO case of which you're a part, all of those foreclosure activities stop by law. So
okay.
should you get involved for $20 or $10 or $5? I think the answer is glaringly self-evident.
Okay. Now, I know you've said this in the past, but once a RICO action is filed, the foreclosure process, wherever it might be, stops, right? I mean, it has to stop.
That's right.
Okay.
So that's part of the time. It's not time sensitive, Doug, for us to get money to be able to cover our expenses. If I could do it all myself, God knows I've made enough commitment already, I would do it, just like you would. I know you would. But we don't. We have to come together to have the strength en masse. So what is the time-sensitive nature? All the issues about the dollar crash and all these other things, they're very valid. But the most sensitive, most pertinent, most salient time-sensitive issue is that for people who are having problems, this is the way for them, for almost no time, no effort, almost no money, which they control, they can stop all of this dead in their tracks.
All right, and okay, and that doesn't mean stop, folks. It does not mean stop paying your mortgage if you can pay your mortgage and send $20. What it means is just what Greg said. That's the fact that if you're in a case like Ann's, you've got more motivation to get involved than more motivation to get immediately involved. Now, how will this stop? For example, here I am. Let's say I'm Ann. I send you $10 because, man, I don't want to move. I've moved twice already, and I don't want to move. But I don't want my house taken away from me, I guess, is the issue. At what point does the RICO, when does that coalesce? When is there? It
comes together once we have enough people to make every RICO case fit the bill of legal requirement on common points of law. I can't give a specific date because I don't control and I cannot influence other than trying to give out the information as to when people are going to get involved, when they're going to engage, and when they're going to start going through the checklist, following the procedures, and give us the time to get all of that put together. I can't control that.
Understood. And I understand that. What makes you so... Okay, Greg, this is my statement now. What makes you so sure this is going to work? Or is it a case where there probably is nothing else that will work, so we're going after this because it's been... And RICO, civil RICO actions have been tried and true, so we do know they do work. This appears to be the best case scenario. Is that what you're saying? The civil RICO pursuit in civil RICO is probably the best case scenario.
Yeah, let me say it again. There are no guarantees here. You see, people want definite guarantees, but you can't give it to them. You can't give it to them. It's not possible. This is a fight. If you knew the answer to every battle, you wouldn't fight the battle because you'd already know the solution to the battle before you conducted the fight. Nobody can give you that answer. But what we do know is that civil RICO is the most powerful way to attack the people who are taking advantage of us. And you remember me talking on numerous different occasions about the fear that I have that people have been made so fearful that they've become paralyzed.
Oh, heck yeah.
You remember saying that?
Sure.
Ann's email is testament to that.
Yeah, and I feel for her.
That's not a criticism, but we have to be honest here. We're not trying to offend anybody. We're not trying to build anybody up. We're trying to just stick abjectly to the truth. Her email is absolutely justifiable. My heart goes out to her, but I'm 3 years into it. I'm doing the same thing. I don't want to have to move. But as I told you Friday night, I can't even sell my house legally.
Exactly. Exactly.
You see, so you can pat people on the behind and give them a cookie and try to make them feel better, but I don't think that's intellectually very honest.
No, it's not. And folks, let me just say this. Look, I'm not too far off in age. Well, I'm in my 50s, but if you've ever got a letter of foreclosure, or if you've ever been 2 or 3 months behind in your mortgage because of an illness or some other misfortune, okay, you talk about stress. I mean that you look up stress in the dictionary, and that's got to be somewhere in the example area. That's stress, and the fact that you don't, in what Greg's talking about here, is the fact that the titles, the deeds to the home, if you go back to the 16th and the 23rd, listen to both those shows, understand where Greg is coming from on this and where we're coming from on this collectively. Yeah, selling your house may not even be an option, even if you're not upside down on your house. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes. See, and look in my case. When we filed the first case, make this real short. In the first case, after as of May the 1st of 2011, when we filed our first case on April the 26th, after we had notified legally the lenders that they were in breach of the contract, and I knew that I was at that point an involuntarily indentured servant and a serf on my own property, I notified them. I set the payments aside for a period of time before I said that's even a waste of time. I said, I'm not paying you anymore. Now, as soon as I did that, within about 45 or so days, I started getting the first litany or trilogy of documents saying from an outfit out of Houston that they were fixing to foreclose on me. Now, you remember I've talked about the right hand not even knowing that the left hand even exists, much less what they're doing? I got a letter from those guys saying that they were fixing to foreclose on me. I sent them a letter, one line. Go to the Eastern District of Texas, go to the case numbered 411 CV230, have a nice day. Literally within one day, I got an email back from them that said, Dear Mr. Morse, we're so sorry. We were unaware of that. All foreclosure activities are now done. You will not hear from us again. Please excuse us for contacting you. Have a good day. Now, the reason they said that is because what they did was in effect illegal, because they were challenging me on a foreclosure that they knew was inappropriate after the case had been filed. That's how fast it happened in my case. So when these people are notified that they are named in a lawsuit, especially a civil RICO lawsuit, it's going to stop all of those foreclosure activities. So you're not talking about foreclosure defense this and foreclosure defense that, because we know in 99.99% of the cases the judges have totally thrown that stuff out. It's just like W said in Irwin Schiff's case. In my courtroom, the judge says, in my courtroom, you're not going to bring up the Constitution. I'm the law in my courtroom. Yeah. That's not from me. That's from W, right?
Right.
Okay. Right. So when people say, well, should I even fight it? They don't realize the value of what we're trying to do here, and our job is to inform them and to educate them on why this coming together as a macro society is at least the first step in stopping their foreclosure problem. So you could send an email back to Ann and say, Ann, if you were going to contact a lawyer to fight your pending foreclosure, what is it going to, because everybody's always talking about money, right? And I don't want us to be afraid, Doug, to talk about money. It's not a dirty topic if we understand what we're doing, and I don't want there to be any miscommunication. So let's talk about it. What's it going to cost you to go to a lawyer, to engage a lawyer, to just begin the process when he doesn't have any of the evidence that we have? What's it going to cost you just to start the process? And you know from looking at the metrics and statistics, these foreclosure defense cases, for the most part, don't work. They get thrown out of court. Well, in Texas, I can tell you the bar says it's anywhere from $4,400 to $8,000 is the average first payment to engage a lawyer under an engagement contract for any kind of a claim.
That's up here in the Northeast is a little different, and but I've got to say it's pretty pricey. Now, I'll just say this: I'm very protective of and both Joe and I are protective of our audience to the extent that one of my feelings is, you look carefully at the cause, you equate the cause with the, in other words, you see what the value is, you determine if, in fact, we, even should bring this up, and then, of course, you proceed accordingly. And I think you've made a very, very, very good case because, in Ann's case or in Joe's case or in whoever's case, John's case, the guy down the road that is 3 months behind because his two jobs aren't cutting it, and he got involved in a mortgage that he's locked in at 10% perhaps, and he's got equity in his house and so on and so forth, and he's fallen behind through just because of events. Well, yeah, believe me, there is no shame in talking about becoming a part of a larger collective suit against, or a larger collective suit. And I don't want to give my listeners, our listeners, any type of cause to pause. For example, I do want them to be able to see the light, though, at the end of the tunnel. Because that, to me, is important. And the light at the end of the tunnel is getting these criminals to stop what they're doing, reverse the process. And when I say reverse the process, I mean to the best possible answer. Well, I'll ask you this, Greg. How do you make this whole again? How do you make this right? How do you make John Smith's mortgage down there that's been destroyed and sold 6 times and made part of a toxic asset? How do you make that right again?
Well, I think Ann's done a heck of a good thing for everybody because I think the expressions that she has laid out in that email are exactly the expressions, Doug, that we've been talking about now for a number of shows. She's done everybody a whale of a service because she's explaining honestly the conundrum or the conflicting fears and thoughts she has. And part of this effort is to give her the substantive answers that will help her to feel better, not emotionally, but factually.
Right.
So
okay.
She may not realize, but by her writing that email and you reading it, that's doing a whale of a service to everybody, a very good thing.
Right.
Because she's being honest and she's saying, what do I do? Well, we don't have 100% guaranteed answers on anything. What we do know is what other people have tried, including myself, and we know what has predominantly worked and what has predominantly not worked. Now, what predominantly works in this country is when the bad guys who think that we are so disparately disconnected that we don't represent a risk because they don't think we're ever going to come together as a group and respond to them as a group. They don't think that's ever going to happen. I believe that's true. That's my opinion, but I believe it's true. If we come together, that's going to wake them up and is going to put a fear in them that they have yet to feel since 2008 and before. So for people like Ann, if they get involved and we then get her evidence and the people that she is being accosted by become aware that they are named in a lawsuit,
that'll put the kibosh to things. Yeah.
There you go. It's that simple. But you see, it's the ethical nature of her honesty that is what I'm trying to generate here. Well, I don't want people to be afraid to talk about things because if you're afraid to talk about them, we're never going to get anywhere. So I thank God that Ann wrote what she said and that you read it because it's not just her story. A lot of people feel that way.
Well, right. A lot of people look. I've got a lot of people who I know who are in dire financial straits, who are having trouble paying their mortgage, who have to decide: do I pay my mortgage or do I pay my my car insurance? Do I, I mean, they're forced into making financial decisions that are not palatable, and of course, again, taking a few steps back, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but Greg, I do think that this is part of a larger game plan to kill off middle-class America, and I think that the current people that we have in power have been brought in here to do so. Now, having said that, Ann is one of many, many, many people out there who are in the same position. So we all have to gather together and say, look, we're not professional. And by the way, we are not, and I don't want to get this, I don't want to say this, we are not professional victims. We are collectively victims of a criminal enterprise. And people really need to understand that.
That's right. And what I'm trying to get across here more than anything is that the thing that I think all of us have missed, all of us, none of us are sterile from this, is that we collectively have powers and abilities because we have the moral high ground. And that moral high ground is based on integrity and ethics and the evidence that we have. If we all come together, we're going to be able to, in effect, play the violin that before we came together, we didn't even know that a thing called a violin existed.
Exactly. Yep.
So what I'm trying to do, if people want to criticize me and say I'm trying to be salacious in what I'm saying and it's all about money, they just don't understand. And I'll be more than willing to take that criticism because think about it. If you can join with the group, remember we talked earlier about the example I used was I've got a screwdriver, you've got the ball peen hammer, and Joe has the pliers. This is a classic example.
Right.
You see, she's tight for money. We're all tight for money to varying degrees. In this case, she gets the benefit of all the tools, meaning the evidence, the personal support, the being able to link with other people who are in her same situation. We all like to know when we're facing, I don't want to, maybe it's not right to say we like to know, but it makes us more comfortable to know that if we're not the only one in the boat. So if we can talk to other people, it empowers us personally, does it not?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's not that misery loves company, but the problems that we all face, we face together. And again, this is at the hands of a criminal enterprise. This is not necessarily of our own doing. One can argue, perhaps, that it could be, but I suppose that argument can be refuted in a number of ways. But the fact of the matter is, you could be the one guy out there, and I'm kind of going on a tangent here. You can be the one guy or one couple out there who's got, a perfected mortgage, perfected title, or whatever you want to call that, and say, well, I did my due diligence. Well, the fact of the matter is, that might be good for you. Hey, congratulations. But then you run into that, well, I got mine, too bad for you mentality, and that's not what we're all about.
No, at least I'm not. Right. Because if we don't win as a group, we're not going to win individually. So we have to take that selfish me attitude, and we've got to throw it away.
Yeah.
We've got to look at it as an en masse effort because now we have the ability, just by the inherent nature, Doug, of the animal, to bring and identify and utilize tools that we individually, none of us would have.
Right.
And if we all come together, the way I've structured the model is that it's so simple and it's so cheap in terms of time and effort and money that it's easily affordable by anybody because they make the decision what they want to spend.
Right, exactly, yeah.
This isn't you got to do this or you don't get any help. No. Read the website. Take it to heart. We mean what we say. You decide what you contribute. And the person who contributes $5 gets the same dadgum thing that the person who contributes $1 million. It doesn't matter. This is about the collective effort. Now, what happens when we all come together? I believe that under the directorship and leadership of people like you and Joe and others, we hope everybody will get involved, that sooner or later those same lamestream media entities that you've talked about tonight are going to get to a point where they cannot afford not to discuss it.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that we only have about 8 minutes left of the show. It's one of the things when I was out today, I happened to I was listening to one of the business channels on the radio, and I'm hearing things essentially that everything is fine, we're just fine, and you know, Greg, I can't help but wonder when the wheels come off the bus, proverbial bus, what these people are going to be saying, thinking, or the people who are in the crunch, or the victims who never saw the freight train coming, or never saw that rollaway 18-wheeler coming off you know, on the off ramp, you know, to rear end you. What are you going to be thinking? You know, and we have, and I do believe, Greg, I think that this needs to be on the front burner of many talk shows, all the talk shows, as a matter of fact, because if not, there are going to be a lot of unnecessary victims to what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's obvious that we're not going to get into talking tonight about the DTCC, and that's fine. We can talk about it because that's a critical component, but it's more technical. I really like the way you've directed the show tonight in terms of the topics we're talking about, because I think at the end of the day, before you get into too many technical details, which we can cover in great, accurate, factual, truthful detail, I think you've got to reach out. I don't know that I'm right. I hope this is right, because if I am, I think that's the genius in the way you've directed this show tonight, because you have to get people's minds and hearts around the issue so that they know it is an ethical, just cause before you worry about explaining to them how the tire and the wheel go together with lug nuts to roll your car around.
Well, thank you, unnecessarily, but I just have to say this, that I think a lot of people, based on the response from the past two shows, they're saying, no, wait a minute, if I understand you correctly, and I think I do, and after looking at your website, Greg, and once again, folks, go to HomelandSecurityUS.com on the right-hand side, linked directly from our website to Greg's. Also, as a bonus there, you can find Marinka Peshman's website as well that explains the RICO end of things. But the fact of the matter is, you've got to understand the problem. In order to work the problem, you've got to understand it. And in order to really get your brain around this, you've got to understand that this is part of the larger agenda of those people who are trying to take away our wealth, our sovereignty, our liberties, our freedoms. And you made this statement, too. We're going to be dead. You know, I mean, this is a life or death situation in many cases.
Well, that's the way I see it, and I know we're getting short on time. I'd like to just say a couple of things if we've got the time. Just
fire away, buddy.
Give people a chance to take this away from this show, and then when you announce the next show, they're ready for it. Think about, each of you, ladies and gentlemen, think about the cost-benefit analysis for yourself. Number two, think about the strength that we will all come to the table and realize that no, none of us have all the answers. It's not possible to have all the answers. But what is the cost to you in time, effort, and money to be a part of the process, to become informed and educated, and think about what, as you individually go through that learning curve, think of the help you can give to others by voicing your thoughts and opinions. We will figure it out together as we go along. Now, we know that civil RICO legally is the right set or the best set of rules because of the way the law is structured to approach these people. Next point, if you don't get involved in this fight, and it is a fight, this is not a rhetorical discussion, this is a fight. Please, someone tell me what other issue that's on the table. NDAA, PNAC, Agenda 21, Benghazi, Syria. Please, somebody tell me what other fight is out there that is, number one, bigger, number two, is more impactful on the entirety of the American society population, and three, which one of those fights can you get involved in and have a very definite positive contributing impact? Somebody, please give me that answer, because I haven't heard it yet.
I'm not going to give you the answer, Greg, but I'll just say this: a lot of the same players are involved in a lot of the same hijinks, and that's all I'll say. And we have to fight the machine as well as the robots that are dispatched by the machine.
Exactly. Now that topic we'll get into specific detail later because it's really important. But here's the thing I'd like to leave people with tonight. If you don't have an answer to my last question, then you've answered the question. If you don't have a specific answer to my question, you have by definition answered the question. Because if you're going to confront the machine, you have to have a way to confront the machine, right?
Right on, buddy. Yep.
Okay. In this particular fight, not only is it the biggest, most pervasive, you can play in it and become a serious contributing member when you can't in anything else. So that answers the question, doesn't it? Because you have standing, you've got a home, you've got a mortgage, you've got your evidence. That's your standing. So now we have a way to attack them in the way I've discussed previously. And that is, we've got to beat them at their own venue, under their own rules, en masse, so that we can make it publicly on the forefront of every living, breathing person's mind in this country. And don't forget, it's not just the mortgage crisis that's going to kill us. The pension plans that have been decimated, the 401ks, the savings plan, the fall of the dollar. And remember, because of what has been done by these banksters, it doesn't just affect us. It affects the whole planet.
Very good point. Greg, I know you're exhausted. I know you're sick. I know that this was a very generous gift of your time. And folks, I just want to tell you flat out, I'm not sure if I was Greg Morse tonight, I'd be able to actually do the program that he did tonight because of the way he feels. And just want to say thank you, Greg.
Thank you for your time. I hope we said something that will, I just hope we're touching people's hearts, because we've got to do that. If we don't, we haven't done our job.
Well, I'll be doggone if somebody's going to say I haven't done my job. Some might say, "Boy, you did a really crappy job at your job." But hey, I'm going to be out. Somebody appointed me to this position, appointed Joe and I to this position. We're going to do our best, and that's and the best is exactly what we're doing. So thank you, Greg, so much for being part of the program tonight. Just rest your voice, rest your body, rest your mind. You've earned it. You deserved it. And I know that you've got some quite a few upcoming radio engagements, very high-profile ones. And, you'll be in our prayers for sure. And I'll tell you, thank you. Mm-hmm. Thanks for spreading this and breaking this. When I say breaking it, to the extent that you have on the Hagmann Report, we really appreciate that, my friend.
You guys are super important. I just can't thank you for everything you've done. I'm looking forward to talking to you next week, and I hope your Bozeman trip goes well.
Yeah, boy, we do too. My wife's got the bail money, and Never mind. God bless you, my friend. You have a good night. Thanks for your time tonight. An amazing program.
God bless all of you, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time out of your night to listen to us. May God bless all of you.
All right. Good night. Folks, that'll do it for us tonight. You've listened to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We hope that we've left you with more tonight than you came with your deliberate time listening to this program. And that reference to bail money, of course.